Good evening.
We are on 57, Nun Zayin. The Ola Gufa Minolon. How do we know that the Zrika of an Ola has to be on the Mizbech that has a Yesod, has a foundation? The Chsiv al Yesod Mizbach HaOla. That when you do the Zrika, it has to be on the Yesod. Limit alos chova shetu'uni Yesod. That an obligatory Ola has to be poured on the Yesod. So if you're going to learn it from an Ola, we've already learned that by an Ola, you need to have two Zrikos that cover all four walls. So you do it in each corner. So Afkan, by Bechor Meiser and Pesach, if you're going to learn that from an Ola, our Mishnah said you only need one matana. But if you're going to learn it from Exer Shavat to Ola, Shtei Matana, Shein Arba, you should have two, which is four like an Ola. Amar Abai Lamali lemichtav saviv ba'ola and saviv b'chatas. It says the word saviv, around. That implies that you have to imply the blood on all four walls. So why, if I learned chatas from Ola, why did it have to be written saviv both by Ola and both by chatas? Havu shnei ksuvim abam kechad. So you have this equation or structure that if you have two psukim that teach the same thing, you don't learn it to other kodshim. It's only unique for them. Fine. That's good according to the opinion that says if you have shnei ksum abam kechad ein melamdim. Elamanda or melamdim Michael Meimar. There is an opinion that you are melamed. Havi Asham. And Asham also says saviv. Ushlosha vaday ein melamdim. So we don't learn from Chatas, Asham, and Ola that Saviv, that you have to do the Zrika Saddam on all the walls of the Mizbeach. Then the Mishnah said, Bechor Nechal Kohanim, that you give the Bechor to a Kohen, and he offers it as a Shlomim, and he eats of the meat for 2 days and 1 night. Torah Rabbana. Where do you see that a Bechor is eaten also like a shlomim for 2 days and a night? Shneimar, it says, Uvsaram, by a bechor, yelecha, will be for you kohanim, kachazet nufal chushoki yamin l'chayiyah. Just like by a shlomim, the breast and the leg is given as a gift. It's one of the matnos kahunas given to kohanim. Hekeshu akosu. So the meat of a bechor is compared to the chaz of a shok shel shlomim, ma shlomim necholim sheyam v'layla echad. Just like we've established from psukim that a shlomim is eaten for 2 days and a night. And now the Gemara brings a very interesting dialogue that occurred among the Tanoim of the Mishnah. V'zu she'elo nishala lifnei chachamim bekerem b'yavna. So here in Shas, we've saying Tainli Yavna v'Rachamea, but here Yavna described as a vineyard, Keren b'Yavna. And this debate went on in Yavna. Bechor l'kama nechal. How many days is a bechor eaten for? Nanim Rav Tarfon v'Amar l'shnei yomim v'layla echad. 2 days and a night. Hayisham tamid echad shebala beis hamidrash v'chachamim tchila. There was a new student, a new Rav, Rav Yossi Aglili Shmo. Amar lo, he said to Rav Tarfon Rebbe, Minayin lecha, how do you know that a bechor is eaten for 2 days and 1 night? Amar lo b'ni, shlomim kotche kalim, u'bechor kotchim kalim. Ma shlomim necholim sheyom v'layla echad. Shlomim is eaten for 2 days and a night. Av bechor nechol shnei yom v'layla echad. Amar lo, so Rabbi Yosef Lili said, Rebbe, bechor is matana l'kohen. You have to give a bechor to a kohen. Chatas for asham, the kohanim eat the meat, is also matana l'kohen. Ma chatas for asham liyom v'layla. Chatas for asham is only eaten for 24 hours. Av bechor liyom v'layla. So maybe a bechor should not be eaten for 2 days and a night, but rather like a chatas and an asham for only 1 day. Amr lo, Rav Tarfon responded, Nidon dover mitoch dover. I would rather learn something that is comparable, like a Bechor we said is Kochim Kalim, and Shlomim is Kochim Kalim. So it's better to dan dover mitoch dover. And Vinilma dover mitoch dover. There's another comparison. Ma Shlomim ein boin al chet. Don't bring Shlomim as an atonement for an Aveira. A Chatas and an Ashram is brought for an atonement for an Aveira. So it's much more logical to compare the Bechor to the Shlomim. Afchoyin a Baal Chet. So because of these two analyses, it's more analogous. Ma Shlomim nechol m'shlayom v'layla echad. Bechor nechol shlayom v'layla echad. Omer Los, Rabbi Yossi responded, Rabbi, I'll also use your same principle. Nidin davar midad davar, and you love me davar midavar, but through a different approach, to a chatas and an osham. Chatas for osham maton l'koyim, ubchor maton l'koyim. So that's what makes them similar. And ma chatas for osham ein boim b'neder v'nedava. You don't bring a chatas and an osham as a donative korban. You bring it because you're obligated to bring a chatas. You ate chaylev, b'shogeg. You have to bring a chatas. You were chayiv me'ilah. So you're obligated to bring in osham. These are not donative that you bring it when you want. The same thing, a bechor, you must bring the bechor to the kohen. It's not offered as a neder and a dova. And therefore, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, the bechor should not be like a shlamim where it's eaten for 2 days and a night, but rather it should be like a chatas and an osham where it's eaten for 1 day. Kafat Rabbi Akiva, v'nistalek Rav Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva jumped into the fray, and Rav Tarfon retired. Amar lo, Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yossi, Hareyu oimer, but there's a pasuk, uv saram, which refers to the meat of a bechor, yelacha. It should be like to you, like the chazan at Tnufa. We're not using logic here. It's a hekesh min Torah. Ma shlamim nechol l'shnayam v'layla echad, av b'chor nechol l'shnayam v'layla. Period. Full stop. And from a logic, you can't ask a kasha on a hekesh from the pasuk. Amr lo. Fine. I accept what you said, but I'm not giving up the fight. I won't use svara. But you made a hekesh from the meat of shlomim to the chaz v'shok. However, anima kisho lechaz v'shok shel toda. Now, a korban toda is the only difference with a korban toda than a regular shlomim is it's brought when a person survives 4 episodes. He's in prison and he's released from prison. He was sick and he was healed. He was on a long trip and he came back. All the reasons why we bench goymel today, in the times of the Beis Mikdash, they brought a korban toda. Now, a korban toda was like a shlomim. The only difference was you had to bring 40 loaves of bread, and it was only eaten for 1 day instead of 2 days. And there also, the chazav and the shok is given from the korban toda to the kohanim. So you just said there's a hekesh to the chazav and shok, to the bechor. Fine. But I'm going to make it a hekesh to ma toda nechelas liyam v'layla, av bechor nechel liyam v'layla. Don't be makish it to a regular shlomim, which can be eaten for 2 days. We can makish it to the toda, which is only eaten for 1 day. Amr lo, you're correct. Hareyu omer uv saram yelacha. By the bechor, it had this extra pasuk that said, the meat shall be for you, like the chazeh and the tnufa, like the chazeh and the shok. Shein Talmud loymar. Why did the Torah repeat l'chayiyeh? Uma Talmud lo omer l'cha yiyeh. Hoisif hakosuf havoya acheres b'bechor. It gives it another day by which you can eat the bechor, like a shlomim. Period. Thus ends the dialogue between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Glili. Ucheshenemru dvarim lifnei Rabbi Shmuel. The great interlocutor of Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Shmuel. Just like Abai and Rava, or Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, or other Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the great opposing teams of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Shenemru dvarim lifnei Rabbi Shmuel amar lahen tzu v'amar lo Rabbi Akiva. Go tell Rabbi Akiva ta'isa. You didn't have to lose the battle and admit to Rabbi Yossi Glili that he was right, that you could be makish the Bechor to a Toda. Because Toda mehechan landa. Where do you learn that the chazan, the shok of a Toda is given to the Kohen? Mishlamim. Doesn't mention by the Toda anything about giving the chazan a shok. It's learned from Mishlamim. And now, how are you going to go back and say you're going to learn a hekesh and back to the we've already said you can't do that. So therefore, the kasha of Rabbi Yossi Glili from Toda goes away because of that kasha. You can learn it from l'cha yiyeh for the first hekesh, al b'loshen rishon, that the bechor was makish to the chaz v'shok and shlomim, and you could have gotten rid of Rabbi Yossi Glili through that argument. Fine. Rabbi Shmuel, hai l'cha yiyeh mayavid lei. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, you don't need l'cha yiyeh. What does he do with that? Li made abchor ba'mum shehu nitten maton l'kohen. That even if a bechor has a mum, you still give it to the kohen. Shalom matzinu b'chol Torah. We don't know anywhere else what we do with a bechor that's a ba'mum. We know you can't be makriv it because you can't be makriv a ba'mum. But you give it to the kohanim anyways. Now, Rabbi Akiva, where does he learn that? Because he uses l'cha yiyeh to make the hekesh between the bechor and the shlamim. Yolif lei besara, which is plural. Chad tam v'chad balmum. That there's two types of bechor. A unblemished bechor and a blemished bechor. Rabbi Shmuel, what does he do with besarim? Besarim danach bechor is komer. Bechor, that means the Torah mentioned the bechor of a shor, the bechor of a kesev, which is a bechor of a sheep, and the bechor of an aze, a goat. So that's referring to the plural bechoros that the Torah was referring to. Okay. B'maika mifli. What is really the nekuda of the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva? Is the hekesh between Toda and Shlomim, is it a righteous hekesh? Mar Savar, Lo Havi Hekesh. Excuse me. Mar Savar Hemenu V'Dover Acher. Something learned from the hekesh and from something else. The whole concept that we're mafresh by a Toda, the Chaz v'Shok, is learned from a hekesh to Shlomim. But the time of eating, is mentioned by the Toda by itself. You don't need that by hekesh. But something that is learned from the hekesh and a dover acher is still a hekesh, which then precludes it from being used by kodesh because of our rule that ein lemedim hekesh from a hekesh. But mar savar, when you learn from a hekesh and something else, it's lo havi hekesh, and therefore you can learn a hekesh because it's not considered a full hekesh. Bishma vandamar lo havi hekesh, like Rabbi Akiva, haynu dichsiv. We have by Yom Kippur. It says v'chein yaseh le'ol moed. That on Yom Kippur the Kohen Gadol went in and he threw achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'sholosh, 1 to 7 between the badim in the Orna Kodesh. He also did it on the parochas. Kishem shemazel lifnai v'lifnim achas lamala v'shev lamata midam apar. Just like you sprinkled in the Kodesh Kodoshim from the blood of the par, kach mazeh behechal, with the par. You also came out to the Eichel and you sprinkled it on the parochas. Remember, the Kohen Gadol shechted the par for the family of the Kohanim. Then they brought a pair of goats and they did a goyro, right? LaShem or Lazazel. One of the goats was sent Lazazel to the midbar and fell off a cliff. The other goat was shechted, and that was for the sins of Klal Yisrael. The par was for the Kohen Gadol and the family of the Kohanim. The Sa'ir is the kapara for Klal Yisrael. So, just like you went inside with the goat's blood, and you sprinkled achas l'sheva with the damasor, kach mazabech, you did the same thing in the parochas. This is learned out with a hekesh. The dama par and the damasor are learned one from another from a hekesh when it says the asa es damo kasher asala dama par. Do the blood of the goat the same way you do the dam of the par. It only talks about some of the sprinkling details in one of them. Some of it is learned from a hekesh. It's not everything that's learned. That's what we mean by hemenu v'dover acher. So that's what Rabbi Kiva holds. That hemenu v'dover acher is not a problem. It's not really a hekesh. And therefore doesn't violate the rule by kodshim. But el lamanda omer avi hekesh. But according to Rabbi Shmuel, it says that lamed mimenu umidover acher is a hekesh. Mike lamemar. How can you learn this hekesh between the par and the sawyer to teach me that I sprinkle the blood on the parochas as well? You can't learn a hekesh from another hekesh. So we answer the second hekesh is makomos of the gamri me'adodi. The various place where you're supposed to sprinkle, that's learned from the hekesh. Only the place, not necessarily the amount, right? Rashi. It's not considered choizer malam behekesh. The behekesh kamo. These in the first hekesh, the par v'sor were compared, and only in the second hekesh the makomos were compared. But regarding toido b'chor, the chaz v'shok of the toda is already compared to the b'chor, and the whole thing is learned from a hekesh to the shlum. If you want, the second hekesh, it's not really teaching us details. Right, when it says v'chein yaseh lo moed, chutz mifnim b'chad zimna gomer. It's all learned in one shot. B'yishmaman de Omar, lavi hekesh. It's good according to Rabbi Kiva. It says it's not a hekesh. Hainu d'chsiv mimoy shvoisechem taviu lechem tnufa shtayim shnei esronim soles tiena chametz teafena. This is by the Shtei Alechem, and it's brought on Shavuos. How many isaron of flour do you need by the Lachmei Toida? Because by the Lachmei Toida it says Eser chalois of every species. But the challah part doesn't say how much. We learn it from the Shtei Alechem, the chalos of chametz, because remember, 30 were matzah, we're talking about the Toda, and 10 of them were chametz. And how much quantity was learned from Shtei Alechem? She'ein Talmud Lomer Taviyu. You don't have to say Taviyu. Mimoy Shvoisachem Taviyu. It already says Vikraftem. Ma Talmud Lomer Taviyu. Kol Sha'ata Mevi Mimokom Acher. If you're going to learn from, for example, the Lechem Chometz by the Korban Toda, Rehu Kazeh. It'll be like this one. Malahalan by Shtei Alechem is Isaron. L'chala, every chala was one Isaron Kemach. Because it says Shtayim Shnei Esronim. So you have 2 loaves with 2 Esronim. It's 1 Isaron for each loaf. Avkan, the Eser Lachmei Chometz of a Toda, is 1 Isaron L'chala. Now, Imala Alam B'Shtei Alechem, Shtei Esronim Avkan, Shtei Esronim, maybe Shtei Esronim for all 10. Talmud Lomer Tiena, only by the Shtei Alechem is Shnei Esronim. The Chametz Toda has more, is 10 Esronim. So you need 10 Esronim for the Chametz of a Toda, which is also Hemen of a Dover Acher. Because you have to bring 10, and the Hekesh is Shtei Alechem. The Lamadnu Asro L'Chametz. So we need 10 Esronim for the 10 Chalas. What about Asora Esronim Lamatzah Minayin? Again, by the matzah, there were 30. Right. Asara Isron L'Shloishes Minin Sheba Matzah. Remember, there's 40 loaves. There are 3 types of 30 of the loaves are matzah, 10 of the loaves are chametz. So you need 10 isaron for the 10 chalos, 1 isaron for a chala. And now we're saying you need 10 isronos for the 30 matzahs. Talmud Loimar, it says v'ikriv chalos matzos al chalas lechem chametz. Sort of, it's a hekesh from the matzah to the chametz. Neged chametz haba matzah with the same shear. 10 esronos you need for the chametz, even though there's only 10 loaves of those, and then 10 esronos to make the 30 matzahs. Fine. Elamanda amar havi hekesh. But according to the mandamar that says Amen of the Davar is a hekesh, and you can't turn around and learn the hekesh to something else, Michael Meimar. How did we learn the amount of chametz sebetoda to the matzah shabbat? The first limud from Shtei Alechem to the chametz of Toda, it's not a hekesh. It's a ribui. There's extra psukim. Because taviyu is yeseru. We say we don't need the word umamoshvosechem taviyu lechem tnufa. It's not a hekesh. It's an extra word. And that's not a hekesh. And therefore it's not considered, it was learned by a hekesh, and therefore you don't violate that rule. Okay. HaPesach, we eat the Pesach only until Chatzos. Mantan, who holds this? On Rav Yosef, Rav Elazar ben Azariah, the Tanya. Rav Elazar ben Azariah, Omer Nemar Kan, it says, Ichluas HaBasar Balayla Zeh. The Nemar Lalan Vavarti Ber Mitzrayim Balayla Zeh. Mala Halan Ad Chatzos, Hashem killed Vahiba Chatzei Alayla, he kakol b'chor. The night stopped at the Chatzos. Afkan, the period of time that you can eat the Korban Pesach is until Chatzos. Amar Rabbi Kiva, Alok v'nemar, the achaltem also b'chipazon. You eat it hastily, ad shas chipazon, when they were sort of hurried to get out. That was not until the morning, when it says vatem lo seitzu mi pesach beiso ad boker. Im kain matam od loimer balayla zek. Rabbi Kiva says you don't need that. Comes to teach us something else. Sheyachol yeik chol kodshim anecholim bayom. Most korbanos all korbanos. If you shecht it in the day, you eat in the day. Now, when do we shecht the korban pesach? We shecht it bein arbayim yud dalad nisan. But when do we eat it? We don't eat it in the day. We eat it at night. You're not allowed to eat it during the day. But why? I would have thought like all other kodshim. You can eat them the day that you shecht them, and I therefore would have thought that I can eat the korban pesach on the 14th in the afternoon after I shecht it. Talmud Lomer balayla. Balayla yenechol venunechol bayom. So that's the proof the korban pesach is only eaten at night. Omer le'abaya umimai Rav Elazar ben Azariah d'oraisa. You wanted to say that Rav Elazar ben Azariah learned a hekesh from Vavarti Beretz Mitzrayim Balayla Zeh that it's midoraisa that you can't eat it later than that. Maybe Dilma, maybe Minat Torah, like Rabbi Kiva, you can eat it until the morning. And the only reason it says don't is Drabonon. Laharchik Minavera. We don't want people to get so close to the morning and not have eaten it yet. So we tell you, you have to eat it by midnight, but it's only Exer Drabonon. So the Gemara says, "In kain mai ela ad chatzois." But it says in the pasuk, no, the drasha mala halon ad chatzois, afkan ad chatzois. Ela kiyasa. Just like the other dinim that we learn in the Mishnah, for example, you can't eat it unless you subscribe to it. You cannot eat it unless it's roasted. Those things are doraisa. Mahasam doraisa. Afkan, this rule of ad chatzos is nami doraisa. The Rambam says that minat Torah you could eat it until the morning. The Chachami made a gzeira so you be marchik min avera, which is Rabbi Kiva. The halacha is like him. Some Rishonim paskin like Rav Elazar ben Azariah. So regarding the Shulchan Aruch, regarding the Afikomen, which sort of stands in place of the Korban Pesach, you have to eat it before Chatzos. And all the Achronim say that. Hadron Lach Ezer Makaiman, Hadron Lach Ezer Kama, Hadron Lach. Very important, very important, very important parak we learned. Okay. Tomorrow, 7.